I wanted to talk about one other topic too, separate from your work as an activist, as an organizer. I know that you had a post on social media about a protest that you had witnessed that was spread pretty widely. We have a picture of the protest. Can you tell us a little bit about the experience of that event?
Yeah, so that happened here in Farmington, New Mexico, which is a border town just outside the Navajo Nation, just a few miles. And that happened last Thursday. This was the second protest that Farmington held. There was one the week prior, and they're open New Mexico rallies. And I would drive around and capture some video and take some photos because my mom is an essential worker. She works at the Indian Health Service in Shiprock, New Mexico. And so when she was coming home from work, she saw the protest happening. So we went around and to see what was happening. And it was really a Trump rally. They had big signs, Trump Pence signs, people on microphones talking to the mass crowd. I think there were over 500 protesters that gathered last week, and then unfortunately, had Nazi swastika flags, and that is very infuriating, especially miles from a Native American reservation. And,
Yeah.
Some of the pushback is that, this is an open New Mexico rally. We were waving this flag because this is how we feel about our governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, and that the way she's enforcing this lockdown. Parts of New Mexico have opened up, but Farmington and the San Juan region area is one of the most infected regions of New Mexico. And, the fact that it borders the Navajo reservation, where a lot of our people come to shop, because there are only 13 grocery stores across the Navajo Nation, which is 27,000 square miles. So a lot of our people have to travel 2-3 hours to these border towns to do their essential shopping. And they're among these people who are protesting and without masks and in huge gatherings, and making it worse, spreading the virus. And our people have to shop among them. And so
Yeah.
that's putting, and just, on a basic human level to think about your neighbors who are Native American, that's something they should be thinking about and they should be considering. And I know that a lot of people are frustrated right now because of their businesses, but really this comes down to loving each other and caring for each other as humans and as neighbors. And that's what has been infuriating about this. And then also the fact that these protesters would compare the New Mexico governor's lockdowns as a Nazi regime. I think that's a comparison that's trivializing the real trauma that the Jewish people and Native Americans both faced. We both faced genocide and this forced assimilation, and again, centuries of trauma. And they're calling, his sign there says, "What's next? Concentration camps." And the fact that their neighbors, Native Americans, were put on reservations that were essentially concentration camps, and Hitler modeled the Jewish concentration camps on what colonizers in America did to Native Americans.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like they're this close to actually learning something, but they're resistant to the actual learning. And I can only imagine how scary it must be to see a group of hundreds of these people, swastika flags being raised. And at some of the other protests, you've had swastikas, you've had clearly anti-Semitic signs and things like that. And in the case of the swastikas, they say, sort of as you pointed out, no, we're just holding this because the governor's a Nazi. The thing is, like, I've felt through the course of my life sometimes that the government is pursuing sort of fascist policies and things like that. I never waved a Nazi flag. It seems like it's not necessarily so much about the person you're protesting as an excuse to maybe wave a flag that you're kind of interested in. I don't feel obligated to comment on that, but that's sort of what I've been thinking as I've watched these protests spread across the country.
Well, I do have a comment because I have grown up around this area and am very familiar with the history of Farmington, New Mexico, which does have a history of racism. There's towards against Native Americans, against the Navajo people, who also, there's a large population of Navajo people living in this border town. And there's a book called The Broken Circle that's about that racism. And living here and around here is, I've seen it firsthand where there's these big trucks driving around with their Confederate flags hanging out the back of the trucks. And so that kind of like almost Southern pride that's up here that's in the Southwest in New Mexico. And so for me, it's like, we also need to consider the history of this town with the relationship and the tension that does exist between the non-native population and the Navajo population. And just growing up, and I have stories that I could share from my childhood of acts of racism that were against my family, against my little brother, who actually today's his birthday, and he committed suicide. And he left a note, and in the note it said, "It's hard to stay alive when you're brown and gifted." And I think that speaks volumes to his experience living in this area.
Wow, that is absolutely devastating. And so, yeah, I can only imagine how hard today must be. But I'm sure you'd be incredibly proud of the work that you're doing. And, as an individual, as a representative of TYT, I want to thank you both for that work, trying to draw attention to an absolute tragedy that both could have been avoided and could be improved in the future if the right people take notice. And I want to thank you for joining us on the program today and talking about these issues.
Thank you so much.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.